So in this video, we're going to look at After Effects expressions. If we go to After Effects expressions in a website, we'll find a bunch of websites that talk about expressions, where we can learn to do expressions. So I'm going to this motion script one by this wonderful person called Dan Ebbett, and he's got a bunch of references there for scripts. One of them is this realistic bounce and overshoot, and it's a collection of expressions, and he's even got some nice examples here about what these expressions do. So like a basic swinging pendulum, a sort of a swing and bounce. What else have we got here? You've seen these, I'm sure, on infographics where people use these kind of effects. And so this is not done with keyframe animation. If you thought about how many keyframes you would need to just do these kind of movements, that would be a lot of keyframes getting them right. So how do we do it? Okay, so I'm going to be using one of his expressions here called the keyframe overshoot. So I'm just going to copy the keyframe overshoot, and I'll show you how we use that in After Effects. So I'll create a new project, and of course before I do anything I will save it in a new folder called expressions, and this is my expression project, and I'm going to make a, let's go larger, a new composition called overshoot, and everything there looks fine, and a new layer, and I'm just going to make a solid layer. What color have we got here? Let's take a sort of a nice blue that's easy to see, and we'll just reduce the size of it so that we can move it around and see what we're doing. Now, I'm going to start with a basic keyframe animation. So if I go to, let's say, position, and let's say at 1 second, I'm going to move from here to here. Okay, nothing special about that so far. Now, what I'm going to do is to hold down the Alt key and click on the stopwatch, and that opens up the expression interface. So just again, hold down the Alt key and click on the keyframe, the stopwatch of the property that you want to transform. Now I'm just going to paste this expression into the place here, and you can see there's my expression that I got from the Dan Ebbett website. Now I'm just going to reduce my workspace for maybe 2 seconds and see what we get. You can see now that there's a little bounce, a little overshoot bounce when the solid gets to its second second keyframe. Let's play around with it a little bit. We've got a decay of 5. If we reduce this amount, let's say back down to a decay of 1, then it will decay less. So it's actually bouncing a lot more. So let's put it back to, let's say, around 2. What does that look like? So with these expressions, often you just play with the numbers until you get the look that you want. Frequency, well, what's that going to do? If we double it, then it's speeding up the speed of the bounce at the end. So it was 3 originally. What if we make it 2? What does that look like? Okay. What else do we have down here? We have a value of the amplitude, which at the moment is 001. Let's make it 005 and just see what that's actually doing. If it's a little hard to see what it's doing, let's make it much bigger. Let's go to 10. It should be that it's bouncing not faster but further. Let's go to 50 times the Okay, so by playing with the variables, the frequency, the decay, and the amplitude here, we can use this expression to control the kind of movement that we want to see. This can be especially nice if we combine it with the right kind of sound effect. I've got this nice cartoon boing sound effect that I got from the free website. So if we just stretch that out a bit, and well, actually it's vibrating. The sound is vibrating too slowly now, so I would probably want to put that back to, I don't know, maybe 6. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so you can see, with the right sound effects, this could look quite good. Think about how we could use it with something other than position. So let's say if we get rid of the expression from here, and if we wanted to use scale instead, like we did with the bar graph. So we would do the same thing. We would, let's see, let's start on frame 1. Let's set the anchor point down to the bottom of our shape. Disconnect the scaling X and Y, and start with a scale of 11% here, and at 1 second take it up to, what's that, about 60%. And then the same thing again, if we hold down the Alt key and replace transform scale with our value, with our expression, then we can start to play with the scaling here so that things bounce in with a little overshoot, and again play with the frequency, the decay, and the amplitude to get something that looks good for our bar graph. For the second expression, I want to show you the motion trail expression. If we go up under help, you'll see one section is the expression reference, and that takes us to the Adobe expression language. If you were interested in learning how to actually write expressions, it's basically a programming scripting language, and you have the basic guide for getting started there. Right down the bottom of this language reference are some examples. So let's take one of those. I would like to take the expression to create a trail of images. Now, this one here, we set the layer up and we name it, let's see, hang on. We'll set the layer up. So we'll take a copy of this expression. We'll go back into After Effects, and we'll create a new one called Trail. And again, a new solid layer. Okay. And again, I'm just going to set up a basic motion here with my position. Let's see, we'll go to 2 seconds and we'll end up down here. And in fact, let's put a couple of nice little turns into our motion path. So we have a, let's see, we'll have a workspace of 3 seconds, and we have a basic movement. Now, what we do here is to duplicate it. So I'm going Command D to duplicate it, and on the let's make the top one. Make the top one to be the leader, and this second one here follow. Follow. So at the moment, if I just played it, I've got 2 frames exactly on top of each other, so we don't see anything. Now, if I open up the position and click on the Alt and click on the stopwatch and paste this this expression in here, what we have now is that it will be half a second behind. Now that's a bit too far. I'm going to, let's take it down to 0.1 of a second and have a look at that. Yeah, not bad. Maybe even smaller, 0.05. Okay, that's getting better. Now I'm going to make lots of trails, but before I do, I'm just going to go in and get one more. I've got a nice little script here from this comp, which I just want to look at the opacity that I'm using here. In here I have an opacity expression, which is also going to make my second, let's see, bring up the opacity and paste this expression in. By the way, this opacity expression here I'll put onto BBLearn. So this now has 2 expressions. One is causing the second one to follow, and the second script is making the following shape to be only 0.75 opacity. So it's a darker expression. And what's absolutely lovely about this is now if I duplicate with Command D and make a bunch of 13 scripts here, they are all following in a really nice little motion trail, and I can determine how long the trail is by how many layers, how many times I duplicate it. With all these expressions, it's all about saving time. Imagine how long it would take to manually set up the follow distance and the opacity of each of those layers. But with a couple of expressions very cleverly used, we get this fabulous effect. So by now I hope you've got a sense of what expressions are, how to use them in After Effects, and the sort of things that they're good for. In your infographics, think about how you can move something onto the stage in an interesting way. Give it some rotation, give it some bounce, use the overshoot and the text expressions together. Think about using motion trails when you bring something on. So I'll let you experiment with these scripts, and if you want to investigate scripts further, you've seen the Dan Ebbett site and also the Adobe Expressions examples page, where there are many more expressions and many more examples that you can download and start experimenting with. All right, we'll leave this tutorial here, and as always, I look forward to seeing what you make with these new skills.